General, what was Officer Andres trying to accomplish there? You said he misjudged the turn. He called in, boxed him in.
Yeah.
What was he trying to do that he then misjudged the turn? And are you saying that if me or anyone else went up onto a curb, hit a stop sign, knocked it into somebody else, and knocked them into a coma, that we would not face any criminal charge?
Yeah, under these circumstances, you would not. Just the way in 1 out of every 10 cases is a criminal case and it isn't. So let me take the powerboat example on the bay. A man in a powerboat drives over a woman in a sailboat without a lookout and going too fast. Kills that woman. Not a criminal charge. So yes, the answer is yes, that if you did the same thing, you would not be charged. Now what was he doing? This is my speculation as to what he was doing. Okay? I believe that he was following Mr. Gonsalves the way officers were following people all over the city that day. And as he attempted to follow Mr. Gonsalves on Bissell Street, he realized too late he couldn't make it. Now, look, I'm not inside his head. You'll see what he said because we're going to release that statement. At the end of the day, what he said or didn't say was not pertinent to my analysis. My analysis was, what was his method of driving? Did he brake or not brake? Was he right on his tail or wasn't he? Was he trying to get out of the way or wasn't he? Negligence, a mistake, an error in judgment, it's not a crime. And we see that consistently throughout the state. If we brought every accident, when I say accident, I mean a collision with somebody. Collision, motorist, pedestrian. I wish I could say it doesn't happen all the time, but it does. The number of those cases that we bring as criminal cases, compared to the number of times where we don't, it's very small. And when we bring them, we have the factors we're talking about here.
So whether or not the other officers heard or acted upon the box this guy in comment, isn't it fair to say that that's what Officer Andres was trying to accomplish, to stop Mr. Gonsalves at that point?
That may well be, but it had no impact on the crash. It only has an impact if somebody boxes him in. I can't box you in unless Steve gets between you and me and helps me box you in. So if I can't establish, A, that they did it, and the video evidence shows that he wasn't doing it, I can't make a case against either Officer McFarland or Officer Andres. Now, whether or not they should be trying to box somebody in their own mind, an individual officer, is not for me to decide. What I have to decide is whether that radio call contributed to this crash. And we concluded, based on the scientific evidence, backed up by a state police opinion, that that's not what happened.
General, why did Officer McFarland stop or nearly stop in the roadway, break in the roadway right in his path of travel, and at what time did the radio transmission box this guy in occur? You said it occurred, he started pulling out before that happened, but did it come while he was pulling out in his path of travel?
Look, it came out just before. I mean, one of the things that the state police have tried to do is answer that precise question, but we know that it happened just before. That's why the still shots are both helpful and misleading. What the still shots show you is that McFarland is moving. At a half a second, if you look at those still photographs that are in the package and in the report, at half a second intervals, McFarland is moving. He's not in the same place, so he's not moving. What would be consistent with boxing in? Him staying there. Him staying there.
But he slowed down right in the path of travel. Why did he do that?
So his statement is in there. I can try to characterize the statement. The statement doesn't change my analysis because he's moving. Here's what he says, and I have no reason to discredit it, but again, it doesn't change or alter my analysis. The group has gone by. The vehicle with the flashing lights has gone by. He thinks the entire group has gone by. He doesn't know there's a straggler. He pulls out. He looks to the right to make sure nobody's coming northbound. He looks to his left and sees Mr. Gonsalves approaching. Maybe he thinks he's in no man's land. Read his statement, and then he proceeds. But what's critical, hold on a second, Steve. What's critical here, Brian, is that Officer McFarland is moving. And again, if you look at the video, and those still shots can be deceiving because there are 3 different shots, but the whole time that elapses is a second. It's 2.5, 2.0, 1.5. So he's moving in that 1 second. If he's standing there, stopping there, that's a problem. Frankly, it's a problem for Officer Andres if he were to crash into him. Look, the reality is that if Mr. Gonsalves were to crash into Officer McFarland, the odds of Officer Andres are probably pretty high too. I'm not an accident reconstructionist. I'm just using my common sense looking at the video. Steve?
General, you said you discounted witness statements. I don't think we've seen Officer Andres' statement.
You will.
Any others, but are they all statements of police? Are there any other statements that you took into account that you didn't discount?
Yeah, so we looked at every police statement that was given that we took them all. You'll have. They'll be posted on our website today. You'll have. They're referenced and summarized in our report. Same with the civilian witnesses. They're all summarized. So when you say, when I'm trying to conclude, when I'm trying to reach the most reliable conclusion I can, and I have this debate with my friend Commissioner Paré a lot, that's why I love video. If you give me the video, I know what happened. If someone's recalling what they saw, I'm relying on their interpretation and memory. I've been doing this a long time. I've tried enough cases. I've put enough cases in grand jury. I've seen witnesses testify twice in the same case and testify differently. And if I've got it on tape, that's where I'm going to begin. If that doesn't answer the questions, then I have to go sort it out amongst the witnesses. So we want to know what they say, and I give all the civilian witnesses great credit for coming forward and being cooperative and giving their best account of what happened. But when they are telling us that the cruiser hit the scooter and the individual Mr. Gonsalves flew over the handlebars, and I know from the video that that's not true, I respect their account, and I'm grateful for it. But I know that the video is telling me something else.
General, how would you categorize the video that you have available with other cases that maybe you've been involved with? Are you satisfied that what you've been able to see, the compilation of videos, is conclusive enough? In other words, it's good enough for you to make a decision?
Yes. Look, I'm really grateful for the video. This would be a much harder case to analyze had we not had the video. There's no question about that. Because as you'll see, when you see we're releasing it all so you can see it. When you read the reports, there are some consistencies between some witnesses, and there are some inconsistencies amongst others. Again, by saying they're inconsistent, I do not at all mean to suggest that they're telling me something that is deliberately false. What I'm saying is that when you have an entire event that happens in 6 seconds or less, that quickly, from distance, even civilian number 4 is going from Officer Andres and Mr. Gonsalves back to McParland and back to Mr. Gonsalves and Officer Andres again. You miss things, it happens fast. So again, the video was very helpful to us, and where we could, which was really everywhere, we relied on the video.
General, I noticed that texting is one of the things for recklessness. I also noticed that he had his hand off the wheel at one point so he could make that call, and then he had to basically drop that and reestablish control of the vehicle. So he really was out of control of the vehicle for a very short time, at least one-handed, which would be the equivalent, I think, of even answering my phone while I'm driving or something like that, if I picked it up off the seat and then, oh no, had to grab it. So did that factor in at all?
Yeah, look, I think police officers are trained to use their radio, so I did not look at this as a case where, and I can think of a case where that wasn't charged. Many years ago, before I became Attorney General, on the Newport Bridge, where there may or may not have been evidence of texting, and the car crosses the center lane and strikes an oncoming car. No charges in that case. So look, a lot of times, and as I indicate, maybe not in that slide, but in the report, it's typically a combination of things. And so that fact alone, Steve, would not change the analysis.
General, what do you say to people, despite you explaining the law and the evidence, are not going to be satisfied and think this is another case of a police officer skating on a situation involving a person of color, or the ATV riders are being targeted, especially in today's climate? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because as I walked in there, I said to my deputy, someone's going to ask me, what do you say to those people? Here's what I say. First of all, let me say this. There was no reluctance on my part to charge anybody. There are times, as we've seen lately, where I get criticized for charging people when people think I shouldn't have charged. I'm not afraid to charge anybody with anything that I believe warrants a charge. I don't care if you're a politician. I don't care if you're a police officer. I've charged police officers. I've got 2 pending cases against police officers right now. I had one when I was U.S. Attorney where that police officer went to federal prison for almost a year for beating a juvenile in Woonsocket. There's no reluctance on the part of this office to charge police officers. Do I like charging them? Of course not. Of course not. Most police officers are doing an honorable thing under tough circumstances in what can be a thankless job. They're public servants. They don't need me to apologize for them. But there's no reluctance on my part to bring a charge against anybody, powerful or not. What I try to do is get it right. And what I can't do is alter my analysis because people may not like the result. As soon as I do that, I am tetherless. I have to be tethered to the law and the facts. And if I can't do that, I don't belong in this job. So that's what I say, with respect. And I understand it.
Will Officer Andres, Commissioner or Colonel, will Officer Andres face departmental discipline or any other officers for what happened that day?
So let me also begin by saying, you know, ever since that evening, I know the hearts and minds of the Providence Police were just devastated as a result of Jhamal's injuries. So we too pray for his full recovery, and he's been in our thoughts and minds ever since. I appreciate both the Attorney General and the State Police's work on this. As you've seen, it's elaborate. It takes a lot of effort and time, and we appreciate that. This concludes the analysis of any criminal culpability on any police officers involved. The next phase is to now look at administratively what officers did or didn't do in violation of any of our policies. We're just not starting, obviously, at the conclusion of this. We've started long ago. But this phase had to be completed first. And then, as you know, there's a process for us to bring administrative charges, policy violations against any officer. And we are prepared in a short period of time to identify, and there will be, but how many and to what policy violation may exist, it's too early to disclose and even to talk about. I'm as frustrated as you. Our Law Enforcement Bill of Rights precludes us from talking publicly about any specific circumstances in which officers either face administrative and policy violation sanctions, and to what extent. But I also believe in transparency, and in a short period of time, we will be announcing some accountability, at least to those officers in their behavior leading up to and subsequent of the crash.
Commissioner, has there been any significant change in overall police policy? I know when this first broke, you suggested there may be immediate changes to pursuits, anything dealing with ATVs or motorbikes as far as a position paper, anything like that. Have there been any changes that have been implemented as a result of what we've seen with this Jhamal Gonsalves story?
You'll hear the frustration of not only myself, but the colonel and the major overseeing the uniform division, and perhaps every officer involved. We don't like to see that danger out on the roads here in Providence, and it's been 4 to 5 years since we've had an uptick of people driving unregistered vehicles, mostly ATVs, scooters, mopeds, all around the city in flagrant violation of all the motor vehicle laws. Look, what can we do about it in a safe way? And so we have policies in place, and generally speaking, not this particular case, generally speaking, the Providence police officers have taken off over 200 of these vehicles over the past couple of years. As you know, we've crushed some of them. Our policy originally in the ordinance allowed us only to seize and not destroy. We went through the process of getting authorization for destruction. This continues to be a challenge. So we instruct our officers that if you can apprehend this motor vehicle and or the operator in a safe way, then do it. That's why we've had over 200. If you cannot, and it presents a danger to yourself and others, then do not, because it is dangerous. They are fast, and the majority, if not all of them, don't just pull over upon seeing a police officer put his or her lights on the car. So it's an issue that the general talked about at the beginning. My colleague at the State Police, Boston Police, you know, major cities across this country are dealing with the same, you know, phenomenon of people wanting to drive these bikes and motor scooters on the roads, and they're not safe and they're not lawful.
And Officer Anders is still on desk duty?
Yes, he is.
Commissioner, is it a violation of the pursuit policy to box someone in?
Yes, a pursuit policy, yes. When a high-speed pursuit, there are a lot of, and our policy's up online, there are a lot of requirements for an officer, and boxing in is not allowed in a pursuit.
It's also not allowed, the policy says, in order to prevent a pursuit. So they don't have to already be in a high-speed pursuit, correct?
Correct.
You said that the Bill of Rights prevents you from speaking further about his actions. Does that mean you've triggered Leobor?
No, the Leobor, the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, is a right that every police officer in Rhode Island has. And so, regardless of the sanction, whether it be a one-day suspension or a formal letter of reprimand, all the way up to termination, we are restricted under that law from speaking publicly about the specific circumstances of the behavior of the officer that led to a proposed sanction or eventual sanction for that behavior. So yeah, I'm frustrated. You know, you've heard it. You know, I don't know of any other law that confines, you know, anyone else's First Amendment rights from speaking. I get the fair trial. I get, you know, the perhaps the intention, but we're as police administrators restricted from what we can say about pending cases. Once the case is done, whatever, and I'm not talking criminal, administratively, once it's done, then that's different.
You're no doubt aware there's some skepticism in the community about the outcome of this and the fact that no officers are being charged.
Of course, yes, we're well aware of that. And also I'll say to that is, you know, we look at the evidence. And to the extent it's independent evidence, like video and audio, that doesn't change. But we can, regardless of the severity of the injury or the person that was involved, all those circumstances, we have to rely, and I rely on the professionals here at the Attorney General's office that's been doing this for a long time. And I've seen it in other cities as well, that there's outrage about police behavior and there's no criminal charges as a result of that. I get that perspective that exists. In this case, the evidence, in my view, is pretty clear, and a determination, independent of my view, was made by the prosecutor.
Stephen, if I could address that. Steve, look, you know, I get that. I get it, you know. Anytime I get a phone call and there's been an interaction between a police officer and a civilian and it's a bad outcome, trust me, that's not the highlight of my day, because I know what's coming. And I come back to what I put in place this civil rights team in part for this reason. So you ask, how does that impact this? It impacts it in this way. I've been a prosecutor for a long time, okay? Steve Dambert's been a prosecutor for a long time. Steve Goldstein's been a prosecutor for a long time. John Corrigan's been a prosecutor for a long time. I know that because we've worked police officers for a long time, look, there may be a perception that I can't judge a police officer objectively. I believe that I can. I believe that's my job. But why I established the civil rights team was this. It's why my civil division's civil rights advocate and my civil division's civil chief, Miriam Weisenbaum, reviewed, signed that report, and participated in our deliberations. Because I want another perspective, one that's not from a career prosecutor. I believe we can size it up right, but that is my check. And that is the best way of doing it that I'm aware of. When someone comes to me and tells me another way to bring another point of view into the analysis, I'm happy to hear it. But for a criminal case, that's how it works. And I'm confident that's what we accomplished here. I get that no matter what I do, no matter how much I try to explain it, I will not satisfy some people. One thing I can do is two things. I can make sure that I know that we did the best job that we could, and here it all is, folks. You got it all. You got my 50-page report, you've got the 100-page State Police report, you've got every witness statement, you've got every video. You got every piece of scientific evidence. You know, we talk about the grand jury And the grand jury is a powerful investigative tool, but what the grand jury can't give you is what we're giving you today, which is the information. And that's why I chose not to use it. I chose not to use it because I can't do a grand jury report. I didn't need it to do an investigation because I didn't need to force somebody to talk to me. Again, it's why I thank the civilian witnesses. Didn't have to compel them before the grand jury. And I knew that my ability to share my results with the family and with you and the public was going to be highly limited if I went to the grand jury. All right, so to answer your question, Steve, it's a long answer. I can only do so much. I can only do so much. But what I'm trying to be is transparent and to give you a thorough assessment of why we reached the conclusion that we did. And the takeaway for others, Brian, will be really for them to take away.
Given your announcement today, there was the Jacob Blake announcement in Wisconsin, the riot, the storming of the Capitol yesterday, and a lot of people upset that a lot of those people were, and this has nothing to do with you, but were allowed to walk out of there and say that people of color would not have been treated the same. Are you expecting any unrest, maybe Colonel Manny? And what would you say to that possibility and what they may be faced with, given the circumstances here and across the country?
Well, look, I can't, in the last 24 hours from the time we reached out to the family yesterday morning, my focus has been here. I have not focused, I'm aware of it generally, and of course, I saw yesterday what was happening in Washington. But my focus has been on this case for the last 24 hours, making sure we were ready to go today, and I was prepared to make this presentation and to meet with the family this morning. So look, I can't speak for what prosecutors do elsewhere. I can't speak for what, people who take the outrageous steps of breaking into the Capitol did yesterday. I mean, do I think it's offensive as a person in elected office, as a prosecutor and as a citizen? Of course it was outrageous and frankly very chilling. But my focus today is on this case, to deliver this information to the family and then to deliver it to you. And Colonel, if you want to weigh in on the broader picture, I leave that to you.
Brian, the issue of 50 to 200 motorbikes being on our roadways and highways is a major public safety issue. The Providence Police Chief, Colonel Clements, Commissioner Paré, and I have sat down along with other police chiefs across the state to try to come up with a solution for this. It's a very complex and tough issue to address for many reasons. One of which, there's such drastic measures that it would endanger not only the motorists on the highway, some of which have provisional licenses and are new to driving. It would endanger the police officers who are trying to enforce these motor vehicle laws, but also endangers the people on the motorbikes. And I explained that to the family today. So we are doing tremendous outreach to our community leaders, talking to everyone. Please do not take to the roadways or highways with these dangerous vehicles. Do we anticipate it could happen? Hopefully not, that it will, but we are prepared for anything. And if someone is caught and we can stop them, it will be criminally charged. So this is a national issue, as the Commissioner stated. It's not just Rhode Island. Every major big city and state has this same issue with this new phenomenon of driving these unregistered motorbikes on roadways and highways.
Can you speak to what your investigation determined about how Mr. Gonsalves sustained his injuries? Because he was wearing a helmet. Was it the stop sign? Did he hit his head on the wall? Was it, I know officers dragged him at one point. What was the determination there?
So in speaking with the accident, the collision reconstruction expert, Lieutenant LaRue, who was here, our task was to determine what, not what the extent of the injuries are, but what occurred. And what the basis, as my report stated, was the cruiser struck the sign struck the helmet, and Mr. Gonzalez was propelled forward. So I'm not a healthcare professional, medical professional, I would not be able to answer that question.
And just for the attorney.
No, go ahead, Colonel.
Did anyone speak to that at all?
Well, Stephanie, could you state your question? I'll try to answer it if I
I
can.
was just trying to understand if the investigation made any determinations about how Mr. Gonsalves sustained his injuries. Was it the stop sign hitting the helmet? Did he hit his head on the ground, on the wall?
The report answers that question, and I know you don't have the benefit of having it in front of you, but the report answers that definitively, that the middle of the stop sign hit the rear right side of the helmet, and that's how he sustained his injuries. And that's in the report, and you'll see that.
Okay.
Do we know how fast the stop sign hit his head?
how fast.
Yeah, because it seems to me that if you hit it down here, you'd have this angular velocity, like a baseball bat hitting him. So at 18 miles an hour here, the top of the stop sign would have hit him at much faster than 18 miles an hour.
I don't know, Lieutenant, if you're prepared to answer that
It's
question.
not something we needed to calculate. We knew the mechanism of injury, so we left it at that.
Okay.
Just quickly, at the beginning of this, we were told this would be a 2-week-long investigation. What took it from 2 weeks to about 2.5
Yeah,
months?
well, you know, I didn't make that statement. So, look, no disrespect to my law enforcement colleagues. This stuff takes time. When you see the report, to write a 50-page single-spaced report and analyze this case factually and legally takes time. It wasn't helped by the fact that I was in quarantine for 2 weeks. And then we hit the holidays, and I did not feel like it was a good point to announce a Christmas week or last week. So as soon as we were ready, and we were ready to go effectively, you know, we were still tweaking things the last few days. The earliest we could have done it was December 21st when I came out of quarantine. I didn't feel like that was appropriate. But back up, why did it take 2 months to do it? The answer to that is this. When you see the amount of analysis that's done here, it takes time. And I will tell you that when we are screening cases in this office, remember, we screen 5,000 felony cases a year. This case was handled very differently from your typical case. I mean, the number of driving cases that come through this office in a given year, I'm talking about a driving case where somebody's significantly injured, is in the double digits. Okay, this case was handled very differently. Why? It was handled very differently because I get it, to Steve's point. I get it. When a police officer is involved, it's a different dynamic. That means we better be right. And the way I make sure I'm right is I ask every question. You're going to see in the appendix to Lieutenant, the State Police report, a letter from Lieutenant LaRue to John Corrigan, who's on our team. It was a follow-up to questions we asked. If we thought there were more questions to ask to inform our opinion, we asked them, and that's why it took so long. And then, frankly, to write it up and to put together a PowerPoint like this, it just takes time. It just takes time. And I have to say, like, I've done a lot of significant cases personally as an assistant U.S. attorney, as an assistant attorney general. Like, significant cases don't get done in 2 weeks. We may have a sense of where we're going in 2 or 3 weeks, but to make sure we're right and to write it in a way that is clear takes time. And then, of course, to be able to upload it and have it available to everybody on day one takes time too.
Was the mayor, who I believe is the person who kind of put that time frame on it, invited to be here?
I did not invite the mayor to be here. I think, look, I had this rule when I was U.S. attorney. I think it's really important that elected officials, only elected officials, how do I put this? I want to make sure I put this the right way, that I should be the only elected official at a press conference which announces the results of an investigation led by this office. And that is a rule I have applied when I was there. I applied here. No disrespect to the mayor. It's not personal to him. But this wasn't about the mayor, and this wasn't, frankly, at some level, about the Providence Police Department. They were really helpful in the investigation. But at the end of the day, that's why we put together this team. This was an investigation and analysis led by this office. Anything else? Well, I thank you for your time. I know it has been a busy few days. Stay safe out there, folks. Thank you.
I've got the graphics of everything right